We always talk about how one person can absolutely change the world, but as we go about our daily, ordinary lives, it hardly seems possible. For my guest today, though, one little girl did change her world and the worlds of many other as a result. Becky Murray, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. It's an absolute honor to be with you.
So, you're the founder and president of a charity called One by One that helps people in practical ways all around the world. But so much of what you do began with one little 9-year-old girl named Felicity. Tell me about her.
That's right. So I was on a short-term missions trip with my local church out in Sierra Leone. And I remember on the streets one day meeting this little girl that lived on the streets. And she quite simply had no shoes. So I took her to the marketplace and bought her a little pink pair of flip-flops that cost me 50 pence. So this was no huge act of generosity. It was an insignificant moment, or so I thought. And that evening, I'd said to her, okay, come back. We're doing this huge gospel campaign. Come back and hear all about this Jesus I've been telling you about. So the evening comes around and I'm stood outside ready to go to the gospel campaign. And she runs towards me and she's got this huge smile on her face because she's wearing flip-flops and shoes for the first time in her life. And she suddenly turned to me and she said, should I wait in your hotel room? So I said, no, honey, we're literally just about to go. And the second time she said, yes, but shouldn't I wait in your bedroom? Now, if she'd have said that to my husband or to one of the guys on the team, I would have known what she was asking. But here was a 9-year-old girl asking if she should stay in my room. And I was in my early 20s at the time. I remember thinking, no, she can't possibly ask me what I think she is. So I asked her a third time, and sure enough, she thought I'd spent 50 pence on her so that I could have her body, and she thought that deserved her body. And in that moment, I was so angry, not at Felicity, but at the situation of a little 9-year-old living on the streets, abused so badly by both men and women, that her mind would go there for such an insignificant amount of money, and how worthless she felt. And I made a promise to God and to myself in that moment that I would give my life to this. Even if it's only ever about one child, I'll give my life to this.
I completely understand where you're coming from. I've had those moments myself. And how amazing that this little girl has been through so much. She probably never knows what the impact of her life on you launched. You decided to go for it. Launched an orphanage. It's something you've been dreaming about since you were 4. How did you go from that kind of that vow to God to now having this one by one charity that works, in many countries around the world?
It's been just a daily walk of obedience. That there's been some dramatic moments, but I find it's the daily obedience to Him, faithful in the small things, in the hidden things, as well as the big things. And it's been that's just meant I've been in the right place at the right time for God to open the doors. Hence, been given a piece of land out in Kenya and all these incredible things that's happened so that we can now have these children's homes around the world.
You've done so much in so many different countries, but one thing that I really loved is the Dignity Project. And you look at what's happening, particularly the unrest in Afghanistan with the Taliban taking over. Talk to me about what you're doing to help people in that country.
Okay, so because of our home in Kenya, I had several mums begin to approach me asking for help because their children were missing. And after doing some research, I found out the kids in my own village in Kenya were being trafficked. Up until that point, human trafficking was somebody else's problem. But when you find out it's on your doorstep, it becomes your problem overnight. And so we began to do a lot of research and found out that the reason trafficking was so high in our village was actually connected to period poverty. So because girls are missing a week of school every month, they don't have access to education during that time. And by the time they finish elementary school, primary school, they've missed a quarter of their education. And the traffickers are aware of this. And so they know the girl can't go on to further education or gain real employment. And so they'll come with their job offers of, come work for me in the city, be a cook, a cleaner, a nanny. And so when I found that out, I thought, well, prevention is better than cure. Why don't I go into the schools, meeting young girls, give them reusable sanitary products that they can stay in school every week of the month, equip them with knowledge about human trafficking, the whens and the hows traffickers may target them, but then also sum up the day by saying no price could ever be put on you because the highest price has been paid for you through Jesus Christ. And because the Dignity Project is very practical, doors are open that would ordinarily be closed to evangelism. And so nations like Pakistan began to open up for us, which so excited me to take the Dignity Project into Pakistan. And that's what initially led us to that nation. And what I find so beautiful about working with Jesus is every time we say yes to him, we have no idea what's on the other side of that yes. So yes to Kenya and running a children's home led to the Dignity Project, and running the Dignity Project led to the next yes, which was Pakistan. So we went to Pakistan just for the Dignity Project. It was going to be a 4-day one-off trip. And lo and behold, it was a God setup again, where we went, we reached 1,100 girls, preached the gospel, gave them everything they need in terms of sanitary products and all that side of things. But then on my final day there, they took us into the brick factories. And for the first time in my life, Cheryl, I'd never heard about bonded labor. But walking into a brick factory, meeting hundreds of thousands of people trapped in slavery, just broke my heart. You know, slavery should have been finished in the days of William Wilberforce. And yet here we are in our day and generation still talking about slavery. And we knew we had to do something. So we launched our second home. This time it's more of a safe house for kids that we've managed to pull out of slavery, where they're now meeting Jesus, they're now getting a full-time education and just being loved on in our beautiful home there.
Yeah, and I know a number of those kids had escaped from the Taliban across the border from Afghanistan. You know, it's incredible what you're doing, but I think what people need to take away from your story is I don't think you ever thought that you would be leading an organization of this size, this many projects, impacting this many countries. Talk to me about, you know, how God kind of plants that dream in your heart and then how he opens those doors, because it's not like you had a millionaire standing behind you saying, hey, I'm going to fund everything you want to do.
I wish that would be convenient, but no, that never happens. I think the wisdom of God is he gives us one step at a time. And I think the wisdom of that is, I think back when I was 18, when God first spoke to me about a children's home, I think if he'd have told me multiple homes, I would have either responded in one of two ways. I would have either freaked out and said, this is too much, it's too hard, pick somebody else because I cannot do this. Or I would have been like running ahead of God, trying to make it happen in my way and creating an Ishmael in my life rather than waiting for my Isaac. And so God gave me literally a step at a time. So first he gave me Kenya, and I didn't have a penny for that. I remember the first time I got the bill for the children's home, and it was £150,000, which at that point in my life, it may as well have been $1 million. It was so ridiculous and out of my capabilities. But God in that year brought in every single penny that I needed. I mean, checks through the post would come in. Little old ladies in my own church would just put in £20 in my hand saying, hey, put that towards your work. And little by little, through the little faithful gifts and through the big one-offs, God paved the way in the most miraculous of ways. And each time I found God's come with this challenge and asked me to do something. So even now, with the atrocities going off in Afghanistan and with so many more kids being trapped in bonded labor in Pakistan, even this year we decided we're going to double the size of our safe house out there. I don't have one penny to be able to do that. But I look back at the history that I've built with God, and I've never had the funds before. But it's as I've stepped out in obedience to Jesus, he's just brought in everything that we've needed in order to build the homes and do the work around the world with thousands of girls. And it's been amazing watching him do what I cannot do.
Oh, that's so good. And you know, a lot of people say, like, why is God allowing so much evil in the world? All these people suffering in so many different ways. I know everybody who does this work has to confront that in their own lives as they see the pain of the world. How do you answer that question?
I think in terms of with God, sinful man is the one that causes the atrocities around the world. God is the one throwing out the lifeline, trying to rescue people. But in terms of how I interpret it, because oftentimes I'm faced with situations that just break my heart, whether it's meeting little girls living in a bathroom who have just fled Taliban, or whether it's meeting some of my kids in Kenya that literally lived off grass and worms in order to survive. These moments cut me deeply. And oftentimes, especially when I share the story about Felicity, the girl right at the start of it all, often when I speak in detail about it, I'll begin to cry. And people say, you always cry when you share on that. And the truth is, I hope I always do, because that should never be normal. Kids trapped in slavery, kids going through abuse, kids fleeing Taliban, that should never be normal. And if it ever becomes a stage where I'm like, oh, I've seen that all before, then there's something deeply wrong inside me. I want to always be moved because I want to channel that to be the reason why we keep rescuing more kids and keep stepping out. You know, I lay my head on the pillow at night and I think of the thousands of kids still trapped in slavery. And that's what motivates me to keep pressing on, even when life's hard in my own personal life, to keep pressing on, to do more, to live to the full and, you know, fulfill the whole potential that God's got over our lives.
That's it. You're so inspiring. You know, I heard someone say that's why God put us here so that we could make a difference. We're his hands and feet. You are doing it. The organization One by One, the book, Embrace the Journey. There's so much in this book we couldn't get to. You have to get your hands on it. Thank you so much, Becky Murray, for taking time to share with us a little bit of your story today.
Thank you.